today in my segment, we'll talk about why we should be doing this and then a little bit of how to do it. And all the information that I'll cover will be not only on the main website, but you can also find it on my website, which is just the providenthomemaker.com. So the quick answer on why we prepare is so that we are more self-reliant, so that we have more security with our family, with our home. When all this crazy hit about 3 weeks ago in my state, I took a couple of my teenagers down to the grocery store around the corner, and we just went with a camera and we went talking. So we walked up and down the aisles and we just checked everything out, looked at what was completely decimated from the shelves, the things that were mostly gone, and then the things that people hadn't even touched yet. So we had some really interesting conversations about why these things were chosen. Why did they want? Why peanut butter and bread? Why pasta and spaghetti sauce? It was quick meals. It was food people are used to eating, but things that they wouldn't have to think about. But as we walked through, none of us were feeling panicked, even though this was something I'd never seen before, because we were okay at home. I knew that we had food for my family. I didn't have to buy whatever was left. There were seriously 2 loaves of bread on the entire bread aisle. It was astonishing. So I was talking to a friend about preparing and building up food, and she said, now, isn't it a little bit late now? Well, it depends. Late for what? Are you late to prepare for what's going on now? Well, preparing means doing things ahead of time. So yeah, you're late for doing something ahead of time for now, but you're not too late to be wise in the middle of it, and you're not too late to prepare for whatever life throws at you next. There are a million things that can happen and do happen on a regular basis. So as we're looking at these shelves, for us, it's a really foreign thing, but this is how a lot of the world functions on a regular basis. This isn't new everywhere. It's just kind of a new way for us. So my church has focused on food storage and financial preparation for decades and decades. They teach it worldwide. They teach it in Argentina, where these little moms can't even afford to buy an extra bag of sugar to store for their family. But you can always do something. So these moms save an extra tablespoon. They find a way to cut a little bit, and then they save what they've managed to store. We always have power to do something. We can grow things, we can glean things, we can conserve, we can waste less. And when I was 10 years old, at the time I lived down in Texas, in a big city, and my family moved to a farm in eastern Utah, little tiny valley. We were on 1,200 acres. My nearest neighbor was a half-mile down the street, and that was my aunt and my cousins that lived there. We were really isolated, and we were really poor. We would have made more if we had just accepted welfare than if we were doing all these hours on the farm, but that wasn't the way we lived. And my mom was powerful. She was smart. She was determined. She knew how to conserve things. She knew how to be creative with them. And she was that mom glue that we needed. Now, as I've been thinking of how I grew up and how I've been raised and what's been going on here, a scripture has come to mind, and it's just stuck in my head for the last 2 weeks. It's one in Proverbs, and it goes, "She is not afraid of the snow for her household." That's what we're going for here. We don't want to be afraid of what is coming here. So I'll pull that up and read it to you. So there's a verse that we're more familiar with a little bit earlier in the chapter. It's Proverbs 31. The famous verse in here is 10, sorry. "Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies." Well, I love learning, and I love learning about the original language that this was written in. So I looked up to see what the word for virtuous was and what maybe the translation didn't carry across. What meaning was there that might not have come across into the English? So the word for virtuous is the Hebrew kail, and it means a force, something strong, something powerful. So it's saying, who can find a strong, powerful woman? Her price is far above rubies. Now, I'll read you some more in that chapter. Down on verse 21, she is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. It's a color that is representative of warmth and comfort. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in the time to come. That's maybe better translated as she smiles at the future. She's not worried. She looketh well to the ways of her household, and eateth not the bread of idleness. Her children arise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praiseth her. Many daughters have done virtuously. Remember, virtue is power. So many daughters have been powerful or strong, but thou excellest them all because of what she does in her home. Favor is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. We have this kind of power, this kind of opportunity in our homes, with our children, with our husbands, and just how we run our household. We have that ability to be a Kyle woman, a strong, powerful woman, and not be afraid of the snow for our household. Now, when we lived on the farm, we were 2 hours from the nearest grocery store. So we went shopping once a month, and that was it. There were 7 children at home at the time, so we had 9 people to feed. And we went through 6 gallons of milk a week. Now, there's no way that we were going to be able to fit 24 gallons of milk in that refrigerator. So here's my mom being smart. We always had a family storehouse. We had a room where we had food for our family. We had more food there than probably anywhere else in the valley. And powdered milk was down there. So she would, as we needed milk, she'd take 1 of those gallons of fresh milk and she'd mix up 3 gallons of powdered milk and then combine the 2. So it had less of the powdered milk taste. We still had the fresh milk. And that way, the 6 gallons eventually became 24 over the course of the month. And so we got our 24 gallons. That was a Kyle woman. Now, on the farm too, we had beef cows, so we had our own meat. There was a neighbor across the street who had a pig farm, so we traded beef for pork. We had currants and elderberries and choke cherries and bullberries and all kinds of things that just grew wild on the farm. So we'd go pick those and make jelly out of them. We had a huge garden. The only vegetables I ever remember buying were iceberg lettuce. We grew leaf lettuce, frozen peas, because those are really labor intensive to shell enough peas for a family, and tomato sauce. I think those were the only things we bought. So the rest we would grow. So we would freeze, we would bottle. We had an insulated pit in the garden where we'd store our carrots through the winter. And whenever we needed an ingredient, we either figured out a substitute if we didn't have something, or we just went without. It was a whole different mindset. Now we're looking at what's going on with the stores, with the supply chain. I do think the supply chain will catch up. We just have to be smart with what we're doing now and prepare for the future. And we're seeing how fragile this is, and it makes us really appreciate what these traditional ways of doing things were. Now I live in a valley where there are 1 million other people. So I'm not on the farm. I can't do all those same things that I could on the farm, but there's still some of the same things I can do. It's still a lifestyle adjustment. So I grow things, I preserve things, I look for foods and times that I get things when people don't want them. Before I moved to this house, we've got 8 mature fruit trees on this property. Before we were on this property, I would go around the neighborhoods and just look for things like somebody who had apples falling off the tree. And I'd go up and knock on the door and I'd say, hey, would you like some help harvesting these apples? Or are you going to use these apples? And 9 times out of 10, people would say, oh, I would be so grateful if you'd take these. I feel so guilty seeing all this food go to waste. So that's one way of finding food. What you find will vary by your circumstance, but having and building a family storehouse is a wonderful, important thing, and God will help you with this. Pray to know what to do. What is your family going to need? Now, some people have been asking, What's the difference between preparing and hoarding? Times like this, we hear a lot about hoarding. So I've thought about it, I've looked up definitions and tried to decide, and what I concluded was hoarding is based on coveting and selfishness. And it could be on one or either sides of the equation. It could be just as simple as somebody else is jealous of what you have. They're angry that you have it because they don't. That's just coveting. That's not a new thing. Or it could be that somebody really is hoarding and they're like a dragon that is just clutching its gold and breathing out fire at anybody who comes near. Don't be this. So there's God's way of preparing, and then there's every other way. God's way is based on loving God first and loving your neighbor as yourself. So if you're going to be building your food storage, you're going to do it in a way that's not going to cause problems for your neighbor. You're not going to wipe out what's on the shelf. You're going to buy things when people don't want them or when they're less expensive. And when things are in more demand, you're going to back off. And plus, you're going to have some already, so you don't have to worry about it when it is a high demand time. So the way of building this well is it's based in love, it's based on service, it's self-reliance, and it's being a good steward of what you have. So what is the ideal that we want to work towards? Well, there are 5 parts to the way my church teaches it and the way I teach it. One is to have a 2-week supply of water for every person. So it's 1 gallon per person per day. There's more about that on the website too. Having a financial reserve, even if it's just a little bit, just have a little cushion sitting someplace you can get to. And then a 3-month supply of the foods that you eat every day with the recipes you use all the time. Look at what things can be stored, and what is in your refrigerator and your freezer totally counts towards this 3-month supply. It can be a bag of fish sticks in the freezer. It doesn't matter what it is. If you can store it for 3 months, you're good. The other 2 parts are a good supply of basic foods that store for a long time, like 10 to 30 years or more, and having the skills to be able to use them. That's a big one too. So the foods that store that long, the 10 to 30 years, those are things like grains, beans and other legumes, sugar, salt, that will store forever. And you will need some oil too. It has a shorter shelf life. You have to rotate it more. So how do you do it? Again, this is where my website is going to be better, because this can be really overwhelming to somebody when they're starting, but just realize you have started. If you have any food of any kind in your house, you have started. So the box of baking soda in the cupboard, that counts. The 1 canister of salt, that counts. The ice cream in the freezer, that counts. Anything that you have counts towards what your family would eat in 3 months. So the basics are, first, you decide to do it. Second, you need to find a place to store it so you can keep it organized and take good care of it, being that good steward, and make a plan. So be smart with your plan it out, pray about it, do it with love. Don't go into debt. That's not going to be a helpful thing. Purchase more when things are cheaper, purchase less when they're more expensive, and learn to waste less as you're building your family storehouse. So if you go to my website, there are a few different tabs across that you're able to click on. Go all the way over to the one that says 52 weeks of building storage. There are going to be charts there. There are going to be links there to click on that you can do a week at a time. My local congregation leader asked me to come up with a plan where everybody could reach these 5 goals in the space of 52 weeks. So that it's broken down in bite-sized steps there. If you need to do it faster, do it faster. If you need to do it slower, do it slower. Whatever is going to fit for your family. So some of the things that you might see on there is, here's my low-tech version to help the screens. You'll see something like this. This is just the graph of, it's on the page, of what to do in what order. I also have things like a checklist. If you're going under quarantine, these are things that you might want to make sure you have on hand, things that you might not have remembered. And then just decide that you're going to do this. Commit to it, follow through. You'll take an inventory. All of this is on my website. Take an inventory. Again, you already have started this. Find ways to build on what you have already. Find ways to make it fit in your budget. Again, this is all there. I've got a frequently asked questions page. And just as finishing up, what is the point of being self-reliant? Sure, it's family security. That's a big thing. But if we stop there, we really have missed the big point, because we're all family. We're all God's family. And what we're doing is so that we can help and strengthen others. We can be the mom glue in our families and in our neighborhoods. Families are the basic foundation, and however our family goes is how the nation goes. You can be a Kyle woman. You can be not afraid of the snow for your household. So if you have any questions, you can contact me on my website. You can leave questions with Moms for America, or you can email me, and it's singyourwayhome@comcast.net. Thank you.